Cool. See, everybody, I assume, can hear me great. Cool. So, how many of you use Sentry today? All right, awesome. Hopefully, you'll be converts soon enough. So, I'm the founder and CEO of Sentry. I've been doing this a very, very long time now. We started about 8 years ago. Talk a little bit more about that. You can stop by the booth, and I'm happy to tell you the story. But let's talk about what Sentry is. So, how many of you work in a big company where something goes wrong and it's kind of the support team that deals with it or the QA team that deals with it? It's does that sound like a common story? Or maybe nobody deals with it, and once in a while, people just complain on Twitter, at United, my flight doesn't exist. So, we kind of look at these problems and we're like, there's a better way to do this. And there has been actually for years, and it's certain ecosystems like PHP didn't really have the technology for a long time. So we started with Python, for example, and Ruby had a lot of this technology, but we started bringing it more towards the masses and more towards other communities. And the way we look at it is let's avoid this loop of customer support teams and QA teams and people who actually aren't building the product, and let's send the customer straight to the developer or the product team in this case. So what we do is whenever there's an error, we tell you about it and we give you as much information as possible so you can resolve the error. So there's no what browser are you using? Oh, it's Internet Explorer. I don't know. How do I reproduce this? We give you the exact root cause of everything. And the goal for this is always that it's easy to get started. So we have a Sentry Laravel native package. Works just as you'd expect for any modern software. Drop in a service provider. And then you override your exception handler and tell it to report exceptions to Sentry. You can do a lot more than this, but at the end of the day, this is all it takes. And now every uncaught exception will show up in Sentry, and you'll get a nice rich report. We've got way too many features to list, but what really matters here is this is actually my code attempting to get a Laravel example project working earlier, and I failed. But so you'll see here we have this exception traceback, but we're actually highlighting literally my code versus the Laravel code, which I think is super important. We're also giving you a bunch of context around the source code, and interestingly, we're also giving you variables that were used as the calling arguments here. So you can see we have the exception object and the request object, and those aren't overly useful, but you can imagine cases where those calling arguments are actually extremely useful to reproduce the case. Beyond that, and this is actually a JavaScript example, so we work in a lot of places, but we have a system called Breadcrumbs, which gives you a trail of events leading up to it. And I didn't have a great example for PHP, but with Laravel, we automatically integrate with Monolog. So if you're using logging throughout your app, we'll capture those log statements that happened kind of before the error event. And I think finally the coolest feature that we've recently done is something called feedback. So we have desktop apps, whenever Firefox crashes, you get a nice dialogue. Well, we sort of built that for the web. And this is kind of a nice way to get the intimate customer interaction with your team. And it's you can imagine customer fills this out, they're no longer gonna email the support team oh, hey, I hit this bug. It's it's fairly clear that, yeah, somebody probably is getting my message. And it's a lot less noisy than something like a Zendesk issue. As I mentioned, it works everywhere, so we are very, very good at web technology. JavaScript is our largest platform at this point. Python, Ruby, PHP. We natively support Laravel 4, 5, and Lumen. We'll work just fine with React and Vue and Angular and Ember and all these other technologies that you probably use. And we'll also integrate with all your existing third-party tools. So if you use GitHub, we'll allow you to create issues in GitHub out of your issues in Sentry. We'll allow you to send those notifications to Slack, through HipChat, via email. If you use Heroku, we can automatically integrate with your release processes. And it's really designed to kind of fit within your existing workflow. And I think the most important thing is we're totally open source. So we are a business, to be clear. We make money. But you can actually view the same code that runs GetSentry.com, our production app, all on GitHub. Exact same code, master gets shipped to GetSentry.com all day, every day. And that's it, nice and quick. Thank you, guys.